everyone. In today's video, I'm going to interview my dear friend Luciana, who I've been close friends with for several years, and the interview is going to be about what it's like to have a spiritual psychic medium as a close friend. So, this is Luciana. Welcome. Thank you for volunteering to do this.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Of course. So, the first question would be, how did we meet, and did you know at that time that I was a psychic or a medium or both?
Well, we actually met through an acquaintance that I had at the pool. She told me about Melissa and her abilities, and honestly, just because of my background, I kind of believed her, but I was skeptic. So I needed to go and see, she speaks so highly of you, and I really wanted to know, is she everything that she's saying that she is? The medium part was the biggest thing I was interested in, because at that point, my grandmother, if you remember, had just passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of questions. I was just in a place where I was lost, and there was a lot happening and a lot going on and a lot of stuff that I had to take on. So, that was my first experience with you. And I do remember the first time that I had scheduled with you, when I had gotten the call, your assistant at the time was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're going to have to rebook you and reschedule." And I was so upset because I was like, no, wait, this needs to happen now because of the place that I was in. But actually, after meeting with you and sitting down with you, it just so happened that everything happened at the perfect moment and the perfect time. And I couldn't believe it. I went in not believing, and I definitely came out a believer after our first session.
Because, from my perspective, a lot of times I don't like to give mediumship readings right away when someone passes away, because they have to go through a transition period and kind of an adjustment period, and sometimes spiritual healing themselves before it's kind of the spiritual thing to do to bring them through, to deal with some of the things going on in the family and what the family has had to deal with as far as loss. So when I found out that her grandmother had passed, I believe it was even less than 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I said, that's a little soon to bring the spirit through. She needs a little more time to adjust to her transition to the other side. But of course, being the client that wants to connect and has all this emotionality attached to it, that's very hard to hear, because when we have pain or grief that we're going through, we want it helped right at that moment. So I certainly understood the urgency that Luciana had, but at the same time, I knew as a spiritual teacher and from a spiritual perspective, it was better to give her grandmother time to settle in a little bit. So we did the reading, and her grandmother was amazing, continues to be amazing.
Yeah, and some of the stuff that Melissa shared with me was, it was just stuff that it was impossible for anyone to know. This wasn't stuff that was posted on social media, that the pictures were out, or that there was any possible way of her knowing the stuff that she knew. Once we got into it a little bit and she started describing my grandmother, I was like, she had my attention, and I started to listen, and she described her very, very, very accurately. To a T. And then once I started asking questions, I think the biggest thing in that reading that got to me was that she had known exactly what had happened in the hospital as she had passed, and nobody knew that story. Nobody was there. And then to even follow that by making things even weirder, I couldn't find my grandmother's will. And I remember you saying, and I literally hit the floor, your grandmother said that she meant to not hide it in such a weird place, but it's in a gold desk. And I was like, I mean, my mouth literally just dropped to the floor. Like, unless you, like, crawled out of your house, like, snuck up to my window, put your head in there and saw, like, who has a golden desk? Like, only my grandmother from, like, Europe, right? So, yeah, I mean, just the information that you gave me, and the will in the golden desk. By the way, the will was there. So that was awesome. Yeah, so it's like, you know, I just learned that, you know, that day, you know, for me, everything is not what it is until proven. Yeah, like, so I'm very, like, scientific. And, you know, Melissa just proved to me that day that there was just no way that she could have known these things. Like, some people are blessed with just a higher intuition than others as a gift.
Right. And the other thing is, I don't typically become close friends with my clients. I keep a very, like, professional relationship with clients and then have a separate relationship with close friends. But then there's some people that come into your life and you just have this immediate connection. And after the reading, we just kind of hung out and it felt very comfortable and very natural. And so I think it was like a few days later, or maybe a week later, we hung out again, and it just felt like I'd known you for eons. It didn't feel like you were a stranger or anything like that. So, and I'm very happy that I believe her grandmother brought us together, because, like I said, she's one of the few that is a close friend of mine that started out as a client. So.
And now we're like family.
Right.
And now my best friend is a psychic. Medium.
So the next question would be, what are some of the advantages to having a psychic medium as a friend?
You know, I get to do my check-ins, you know, like, some of the advantages of really that's helped me is with my mom who's disabled. You know, in doing my little check-ins, my grandmother is always very protective, and, you know, Melissa is like, your grandmother says, and I'm like, you know, my mom was breaking out in hives, and Melissa's like, your grandmother says it's the detergent she's using. Like, long and behold, I switched the detergent to a hypoallergenic. She's no longer having hives. Like, who does that, right? So there's just, like I said, like, so advantages like that, you know, as far as kind of the direction of where my path is leading, and maybe if I had questions in different areas of life or love, you know, guidance, and everything is backfiled, you know, because there still is free will, of course. So is everything going to happen exactly as Melissa says? It does 98.9999% of the time. She's, like, incredibly accurate, I have to say, and which is, you know, why I only come to her. Like, even though, you know, we're family and friends now, when I do my little check-ins, you know, every 6 months, and, you know, like, every few months, you know, it's definitely incredibly accurate. But I also backfile and just say, okay, this may be a possibility, and there's also free will, but you do happen to be right almost all the time. It's so annoying.
And I just want to throw in there, like, if you do happen to become friends with someone who is psychic or is a medium, one of the things that keeps our friendship very strong is that when Luciana, like, needs a reading or wants a reading, we keep that very separate from when Luciana just wants a friend to listen to a problem, or when I have a problem that I want to talk to Luciana about. It's very natural, like any friend would be. But there's that line where if she needs a reading, that's handled very professionally. And I think that keeps our friendship very strong because it doesn't spill over, you know?
Right, yeah. And a lot of the times, you know, when I come to Melissa, you know, or when I come to you and I say, hey, you know, I really could use a friend. Like, I specifically say, because sometimes things just, she can't control, like, sometimes, like, things just come into her mind, and she's like, oh, by the way, like, and I'm like, hey, like, I just want a friend right now. I was like, you know, like, just what do you like really feel like this is about, or like what do you think is like the best thing to do? And you know, 99.9% of the time I know what to do anyways. It's just having like
a validation,
you know, a validation and a good friend there that's there for you.
And I'm pretty clear too. Like sometimes we will just be having a casual friend conversation, and I'll say something, and Luciana will make this little pause, and she's like, wait, is this Melissa my friend, or is this Melissa the psychic? And I'm like, that was a little psychic, sorry. But because I can't totally turn it off. So it does sneak in there, but we do try very hard, like when she really needs a reading, to set aside professional time, and she pays me like any other client, and it makes the friendship really work.
Absolutely, because her time is valuable, and you know, even as a friend, like I think that's a big thing with having a psychic as a friend too, and for anyone else out there that you know may have that higher intuition, is that you know you're given a gift, but like also what you charge for how good you are absolutely says that this is a gift and you're in service to others because you really want to help others.
Of course.
You know, for anyone that has a reading with Melissa, you will see that like at least at the minimum, like for me, it's always 98% of the time. But I mean, it's just incredible how she does her readings and how they come into fruition. And it's literally, everything's always for me backfiled. So it's never like what Melissa says is going to go. I even forget the readings. And then it happens and I'm like, oh my God, like that just happened. And, you know, I feel like with how accurate you've been and you are, like, you can charge so much money like for what you do, but you have a really good heart, and it's like you're in service to help others, right? You know, and I think that's really amazing, and I think that's really awesome as well.
Thank you. I mean, one of my ultimate goals is to make a living writing songs, writing scripts, writing TV shows, and I would ultimately love to do readings for free, not because I think that I should, but I think that it's such a gift and it's such a great way to help people. I would just love to not have the energy of money anywhere near it, because to me it's a very sacred thing, and make my money elsewhere. Like that's my ultimate goal. But that's all in the cards, hopefully. So the next logical question is, what are some of the disadvantages?
You know, I think some of the disadvantages could be, I think to a certain extent, deep down inside, we always really, really know, right? Like the truth. And we reach out to others and friends and family for advice, and to mediums and psychics. And I think a lot of the times is, be careful what you wish for. Because, you know, a lot of the times, like when I come to you, I'm like, okay, like Melissa's gonna just give me this like happy ending and everything's gonna be good and I'm gonna be in this relationship and it's gonna work out. And it's like, be careful what you wish for. You know, it's like, it's never gonna work out with this person, you know, and I'm like, what? You know, so for me, you know, you have to be okay with really, you know, being safe with the truth. And also, and I think for you, and I've seen Melissa kind of run into this with a couple of people that have been in her life as a disadvantage. It must be hard to hold friends who don't always want to come to you advice. When you're as good as Melissa is with her mediumship and her psychic abilities, like, you know, it's almost like you want to reach out and just grab the answers like all the time. Like, hey, you know, what's going to happen? Am I going to get this car? Am I going to get into this relationship? Like, you know, what's this going to be? Yeah. You know, all the time. And people are constantly like reaching out for answers, and stress and anxiety. And it's, you know, so I would imagine that definitely kind of ruins a lot of relationships, because it's almost like I'm very clear that when I'm spending time with Melissa, it's going to be, listen, we're hanging out as friends. If we're going to do a psychic reading, like, are you okay with it? Are you feeling well enough today? If we do, we'll do it later. If not, we're not going to. We spend the day talking and laughing and drinking, and
bottles up.
tea, not alcohol. Yeah, we're like, not gonna matter. Most of the time tea. Yeah, so I would say that's one of, like, the disadvantages is really being okay with hearing the truth, accepting the truth, and kind of moving, in the direction of, being okay with that. And then, also for you to hold on to friends who are living in authenticity with you.
Right.
Like, really having you in their lives because they love and care about you, and not having you in their lives for
the
advantages and the abilities just because you're blessed with this gift. I would say that's and I've seen people do it, and I've heard the stories of you coming to me being upset of losing people in your life, and I would imagine that's a really big disadvantage.
Yeah, definitely. So the next question would be, how do you talk to your other close friends or family members to let them know that, or do you let them know that I'm a psychic or a medium if you're gonna bring me into that circle?
So it depends on the person. I'm blessed with a family who is very open to believing in me, and also believing in a higher power, but not necessarily a religion. So for me, I'm very spiritual based, and I think a lot of my friends in my circle, it's who I surround myself, are also very spiritual based. So, they welcome you with, like, open arms. They're like, oh, yay, Melissa's coming, like, woohoo, the psychic. But, for people that are maybe, very strong on religious beliefs, it's kind of one of those things where you sit at the table and it's like, this is my friend Melissa, and it's almost like politics and religion. Like, if people have, like, those differences, we just don't talk about it.
Right.
And, but I don't really surround myself with those types of people. Like, even at work and what I do at work, people know that I do yoga, that I'm spiritual, that I believe in a higher power. It's never, well, it's only come up this first time at work, where now one of my officers, my coworkers had asked, we were just discussing spirituality, and they asked, hey, I'd love to have your friend's number. I said, great. So I don't, if it comes up in conversation and I feel the energy of the person is open to it, I love to announce, hey, my best friend does this. She's kind of amazing, and if I feel like they're just not on that same, kind of frequency, then it's like, why would you go up to someone who's Christian and be like, hey, by the way, do you want to have a talk with my psychic friend? It's not, it's probably just not their cup of tea.
Right. So it kind of just depends on the circumstances. Now, this is a little bit of a strange question, but I have to ask it because I was told that people want to know this. Do you have any spooky or, like, mouth-dropping stories about me as a medium or even psychic that you can recall or think of?
I mean, all of the stuff, the spookiness, no, because there's not really anything scary about someone who's a psychic medium. Like, we don't play with Ouija boards and let things float in the air or put people under hypnosis or any witchcraft stuff like that. Like, it's not anything like that. It's just someone who has a gift, and I think who's been blessed with just being a little bit elevated on that spiritual level. So, everything as far as like the psychic stuff, and the mediumship, that blows me away every time. Now, is it like freaky or like scary or anything like that? Like, no, but I mean, I think it's amazing of how accurate you are and how, we don't play with Ouija boards,
Yeah.
like it's, so what I do love is how, you not only do the medium and the psychic stuff, but you are like well versed like in crystals, and you do chakra healings and cleansings, and I will say this because this was probably the one thing that I was like, oh my god, I need you now
immediately.
This is a story where
this is the only time through our friendship that this happened, so
Yeah.
I knew it was like really important.
Right. So, I'm usually very calm, very collective, very, I
Level-headed,
level-headed, I'm usually good. And I went and I did a yoga class, and I also received Reiki in the yoga class. And, when I did this, I felt great afterwards, and I was like, okay, like this was a great class. Well, the next day I noticed that I woke up with a lot of anxiety. And, I was like, man, like, what is this feeling in my chest? Like, I've never felt this before. Like, I don't know what this is.
And I didn't do the Reiki healing or the yoga.
No. This was somewhere else that I went to do a class. And, I let the feeling kind of like be. And I noticed that as the days went on, like, the feeling got worse and worse. And I was in constant anxiety. And I was like stressing out. And I was just not feeling myself. And finally, after like the 4th day of feeling this, and it continued to just get worse and worse, just anxious all the time, I called Melissa and I'm like, listen, dude, I don't know what's going on with me. I've never felt this way before. Nothing has happened. I was like, I didn't do anything. And she's like, well, you must have done something. What did you do? I was like, nothing. I did a yoga class and some Reiki. And she's like, well, what kind of yoga class was it? And I told her, I said, well, it was a yoga class for people in recovery, but I wanted to go and represent and, do the yoga class with a couple of friends. And I think I was 1 or 2 out of, the 9 or 10 people that were there that weren't in recovery. And Melissa says, you did what? So, I guess in receiving the Reiki and doing the yoga, I had taken on what felt like the energy of what
The
anxiety of what someone in addiction would feel like on a constant daily struggle and on a daily basis.
And she doesn't deal with addiction, so her body was like, what is this?
Like, I mean, the worst. Nothing I've ever experienced before in my life. And it was interesting, right? Because if that, in fact, is what someone in addiction fights through every single day, like, I can't even imagine.
Hat off to them for being in recovery and dealing with that.
Yeah, the amount of work that has to be done and what goes into just that every single day. So Melissa, thank God, she's like, you need to come over. I need to do a cleansing. We need to balance your chakras. I was like, balance what? I was like, I'm coming over tomorrow. Like, I'll be over.
She's like, clear your schedule. Like,
clear
okay.
your schedule.
And she's never said that to me. I was like, okay, I will.
And then Melissa can explain a little bit of like what she did, because I mean, after she did what I'm pretty sure was almost like a 7-hour cleanse. Like, I was literally here at her house all day. I mean, whatever she did with the crystals, the sage, the wood,
Palo Santo wood.
Yeah, I mean, just everything with the crystals being on the chakras and the clearings. I mean, I felt back to myself, like, after, and that feeling didn't come back. So
thank God. Yeah, and I have to say, from a spiritual perspective, and someone who's very sensitive to energy. I mean, usually when Luciana comes over, like, her energy is very zen and happy, and it, like, we blend together. But it was like being hit by a macro truck of, like, ah, when she came into my room. Like, I've never felt anything like that coming from one person, which let me know that it was a buildup of, basically, I would assume that the Reiki teacher or instructor opened up all the chakras of those that were dealing with addiction. And so all that energy for them felt very healing because it was released. But because Luciana was also open and she didn't need the same type of healing, her body goes, okay, I don't need healing. I'm really balanced. Come here. And, like, sucked it all in all of her chakras. So the chakras usually go clockwise. All of her chakras, all 7, which are the 7 basic ones, from her head to her feet, were going counterclockwise really quickly. And some were more affected than others, like the heart chakra, which is very connected to anxiety and depression. Her heart chakra, it took me a good, I would say, 20 minutes just working on that, which is the heart, because she does have such empathy and wanted to be there for her friend that she was supporting, or her friends. So that chakra took a really hard hit, but they were all completely out of whack. And I've never actually worked on someone that had all 7 points completely going backwards. So she definitely needed the cleansing. It was a cleansing. I basically cleansed her energy of the negativity, of the emotionality, and then I rebalanced it so that she would feel like homeostasis again. And I used different crystals that resonate with the vibration of each chakra to strengthen each one and to also just cleanse out the negativity that didn't need to be there. And also, I think this is part of just being sort of on the same vibration with a friend. When we get together, whether it's like as friends or as, time to do a reading, we get into like this time warp where time just disappears. And yes. 1 minute you're looking at the clock and it's like 11 a.m. The next thing you're like, God, why am I starving? And it's 7 p.m. at night. And you're like, what on earth happened between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m.? We just get into this like vortex of positive energy and lose track. So I was so immersed in trying to make her feel better and trying to see and feel what was going on that it definitely was a very long healing. And at one point I was like, holy cow, I'm starving. And we look at each other, we're like, we did not even eat dinner. It's like 8:30. So that tends to happen as far as losing time together. But usually, just to give you a reference, a healing I can work on maybe 2 chakras in a half an hour. And then like if I'm doing what's called an extensive healing, maybe an hour and a half, maybe. Which you kind of equate to like an hour and a half massage, except I'm not massaging the physical body. I'm working with the energetic body. But that's a typical healing. This took a good 7 hours because it was all of them and it was so intense. Thank God though, we were saging using dried sage, which clears energy and gets rid of negativity. We were saging the whole time because otherwise all of that lingering energy would have been stuck in my room. But we kept sage going the whole time. So my room was completely cleared and cleansed by the time she left. So I didn't then have to cleanse myself. Thank God.
And all I know is that after that clearing, all of that stuff, yes. All of that anxiety, all of that stuff, all of that, everything. Like, and to me, that's science. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that is science.
That's
when
proof.
That stuff goes away, and I'm feeling this way for like 4 days out in the middle of nowhere, like, and then all of a sudden, like after the clearing, I'm like, oh my God, I'm back to normal.
Right.
To me, that's proof that's like medicine. Like, you just gave me medicine, and I am now like, you know.
And
like,
that can happen very like cause and effect with a healing or a cleansing, or even sometimes in the reading, like she mentioned, with her mom having the allergy, and I was able to connect to her grandmother, and her grandmother said it's the detergent. She removes that detergent, gets another one, like there's your answer, it's solved right there. But that doesn't always happen in a reading, because it is putting pieces of a puzzle together, especially if it's more psychic instead of talking to someone in spirit. If it's psychic, it's like a puzzle that I have to put together, or a movie that I see in front of my eyes. And I have to interpret what I'm seeing, how it relates to someone else's life. So it's a little bit harder to get, you know, be at this place at 5 o'clock on this day and this will happen, because you're putting a puzzle together.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's other times where I can get a date, like she'll ask me, when am I going to get, like just an example, when am I going to get promotion? And I might hear in my head, December 5th. And then on December 5th or December 6th or December 7th, she might get some kind of promotion. So it's all very dependent, I guess, on the circumstances. So
yeah, so that's definitely the craziest story that I've had happen to me, and thank God I had you, because I didn't know what was happening or going on, and thank you for that, because without
you're welcome.
I'd be like, what do I do? Go to a doctor? I suddenly have anxiety. Like, what? And nothing happened.
And the crazy thing is that most people who don't have someone who's very familiar with energy would, after a while, if it didn't get better, go to a doctor and
get
say,
medication for it.
I'm having like trouble getting deep breaths, I'm like feeling very anxious, I can't sit still, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to give you pills to take, or
Right.
pharmaceuticals,
With
because
like 20 side effects.
yeah. And then the person, you know, has to take those, and sometimes it is necessary, but sometimes it is also energy and what you've been surrounded with and what you're dealing with. So
Yeah.
it's important to explore all the different options.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the last question would be, how do you think that you have changed the most since we've been good friends? Or how being my friend, like, how has it impacted you or changed the most?
I mean, I feel so blessed to have you in my life.
Oh.
You know, like, not only are you like my soul sister, like, you know, is this talking with the medium and psychic abilities, or just the friendship? Or both?
Both.
I mean, having you as a friend, like, I know that I could always come to you, I can always turn to you, and you're going to give me, the one thing I love about you is that you're always going to give me an honest answer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, sometimes people, like...
And sometimes that's really hard, because, of course, like, as her friend, I want what's best for her, and I want her to be happy. So when I get information I know she's not going to be happy to hear, it's hard to do that. But you have to honor. I have so much, like, honor and respect for this gift, and the only way to do it with integrity is to do it with as much honesty as humanly possible, which doesn't mean that you don't, like, try to, like, be empathetic as you're giving the information. You definitely do, and I think I'm blessed because I do have training as a mental health counselor, which makes it easier to give bad news. But that is definitely, that's one of the main reasons why I don't allow myself to get personally close with clients. Because if I allowed myself to get close to even 10 of my clients, and they're going through really hard things, like the loss of loved ones or a divorce or a breakup, and I was emotionally attached to the outcome, it would be so draining. Like, I wouldn't be able to do the readings because I would just want to cover my head and not come out, because I feel when my friends or my family are sad, just like anyone else, but I feel it to such an extent that I couldn't do the reading. So that's definitely why I tend to keep those boundaries up, besides being professional. But definitely giving bad news is the hardest thing to do.
I can imagine, but that's what I love about you too, is that I know you won't sugarcoat stuff.
Right.
As my friend, as a psychic medium, in my readings, like regardless of like what area we're going to, I know that you're always going to give me 100% authenticity. And just running across it the other day, the great thing is that we are also all human, right? So just because Melissa is blessed with this gift and she has this like amazing gift, like there's also stuff in even in between like friends that we've kind of got into a disagreement. And then there's times where we have to talk it out and do those kinds of things. So what I love about our friendship is that we understand that no matter what gifts we're all blessed with, we're human, we're gonna make mistakes, we're not 100% perfect. And through all of that, we're always gonna love each other no matter what. And we're always, like, it seems like on the same frequency. Like, we're constantly talking about making the world a better place, being in service.
Coming from a loving place.
Yeah, coming from a loving place, growing together, giving this information to the world. Like, what can we do, not to just help ourselves, but to make the world a better place? And we're constantly, like, right there on the same frequency. It's like turning on the radio station. Like, some people like country, some people like rap, like we're constantly on the same station, and constantly growing. And I think that's the one thing that I absolutely love about our friendship, whether it be the friendship, our soul sister relationship, me wanting to like smack you sometimes, like just loving you unconditionally, like you loving me unconditionally, heart honest truth. And just always being there for one another and
absolutely
being in service.
And I think one of the major things that causes any kind of miscommunication between a lot of relationships, whether it be girlfriend, boyfriend, whether it be like husband, wife, whether it be like friends, is texting. And we had a miscommunication over text because I was making a joke, but when you write it over text, it comes across like very condescending because you can't hear the person's voice. What's it called? Voice.
Like
inflections.
Yeah, like.
And you can't like read the person's energy through text. So for a second she read the text and she was like, "What? Like I can't believe Melissa wrote this to me." And then she's like, "Wait a minute. We have to talk to each other because I know there's something missing here."
Mercury's in retrograde.
Yeah, and the second we talked, like everything made sense. So that would be one thing I would recommend to anyone that has nothing to do with being psychic. When you're communicating about something important, like put the text down and actually call each other.
Get on the phone.
Yeah.
Texting is so underrated. Have a real conversation. Like, get off of technology, be human with each other, interact. That's, like, the biggest thing. And that's another thing I love with my friends. Like, we actually pick up the phone and call each other and talk to one another and have conversation.
And we work really hard to have one-on-one time and, like, face-to-face. And, like, I have barely touched my phone today just because I want to be completely present and taking in this moment and soaking in these moments with her. So I think that's super important.
Me too.
Yeah. So I hope this interview has been insightful to give you a little bit of an idea of what it's like to have a friend that's psychic and a medium. It's so weird for me to say because it's such a natural thing in my life, but I understand for a lot of people it's like strange or like different. So I hope this has helped to give a little bit of insight. Thank you for everyone that's made it this long in the video, and thank you, Luciana, for being so open, honest, and willing to do this.
Absolutely.
And I love you.
I love you.
And just to give you an example, even though we're super close and soul sisters, we're definitely different. I pulled out my my thumb drive from my computer, and it was a little Hello Kitty, because I love Hello Kitty, and it's pink. And she had a radio that was gray, and we put them side by side. I'll put a picture in the video. Totally different, but both super cute, and still go together well. So
your little feminine, cute, pink energy, and my masculine, big walkie-talkie. Regardless.
But I still think they go together perfect.
It's yin and yang.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
So, love, light, and blessings, everyone. Bye. Please don't tell me it stopped.